Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargav, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In this episode, we bring you stories from Uttar Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, and Andhra Pradesh. We will talk about a judicial inquiry report and what it says about the killing of 8 people in Chhattisgarh. We will also talk about a border dispute between Odisha and Andhra Pradesh, because of which many people are being able to avail twice as many government schemes. But first, we talk about Uttar Pradesh. Last week on Friday, the Yogi Adityanath government in the state issued a notification. It said that certain areas that come under the jurisdiction of the Mathura-Vrindavan Municipal Corporation have been declared a Pavitra Tirath Sthal, meaning a pious place of pilgrimage. And according to this notification, the sale of alcohol and non-vegetarian food is now banned in these areas. In this segment, we speak to Indian Express's Sourav Roy Barman about this decision and what it means for the people in the region. Sourav, could you start by talking about the reason why this is being done?
So see, out of 70 municipal wards in Mathura-Vrindavan area, so basically 22 municipal wards have been notified as Pavitra Tirtha Sthal, which is basically pious place of pilgrimage. Now, when you talk about why these areas have been notified as Pavitra Tirtha Sthal, is basically the government believes these are religiously very important areas and very historically significant also, and very crucial from the point of view of tourism. Which is why once they designate these areas as Pavitra Tirtha Sthal, the sale of alcohol and all sort of non-vegetarian food will be banned, outlawed. And while making the announcement around 10 days back during Janmashtami, the Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath attributed this entire proposal, which is now essentially has been implemented. Now he attributed the entire thing to the wishes of the local people, the people of Mathura city, which is known to be the birthplace of Lord Krishna, and which is why it is also considered a holy place, drawing tourists from across the country and the world.
Okay, so the notification was issued on Friday. How have the people in the region reacted to it since?
So I was there on Saturday, and team of Indian Express primarily visited the municipal wards that are home to, flourishing meat markets, fish markets, known for non-vegetarian eateries, restaurants. So all these outlets are now shut. So according to the official government statistics, out of around 40 licensed meat shops in entire Mathura district, 18 of them fall in this one area known as Bharatpur Fatak, which is a predominantly Muslim locality. So now they have been hit very hard, and they are obviously upset, they are angry. And most importantly, these markets did not come up overnight. So they did not actually come up in the recent years. They have been here for generations. So yeah, there's a lot of confusion also. Apart from anger and frustration, there's a lot of confusion among officials as well as the local people, because you don't know where you fall, where your shop falls, in which ward. So many people told me it never mattered in which municipal ward our house or our shop fell. It never mattered before. All of a sudden, this has gained so much significance. So the administration as well as people are trying to figure out their place in the municipal map of the city.
And talking about the ban on non-vegetarian food, in many communities, it is an integral part of their culture and just, what they eat on a daily basis. And on the face of it, this law appears to be impinging on the personal liberty of people. Have people in the region raised similar concerns about it?
Certainly, you can't expect everyone to throw around to know the constitution by heart. But I did meet people who actually referred to Article 19 and 21 of the Constitution, and that essentially talks about freedom of expression, life, personal liberty, or to carry out a business of their own liking or choosing. So there are people who are aware of. They believe this order, this is unconstitutional, it violates their fundamental rights. And in fact, one gentleman also spoke about how after the BJP came to power in 2017, one of the very first decisions of the government was to enforce a ban on illegal slaughterhouses. Now, very importantly, there's this Allahabad High Court observation of 2017 itself. And the court had observed that in the name of enforcing this ban on illegal slaughterhouses, you cannot enforce a backdoor ban on the consumption and sale of meat. So yeah, all these things are there.
And this ban has been imposed in the Mathura-Vrindavan Municipal Corporation. But this is not the first time this has happened in UP, right? We know that similar bans have been imposed in other parts of the state as well.
Yeah, you have such bans or prohibitions in areas, even in Mathura district, even within the confines of the Mathura-Vrindavan Municipal Corporation. 3 years back, around 7 wards in Vrindavan were notified as Pavitra Tirthasthal. And you have other districts, you have Ayodhya, Chitrakoot, Deoband, even areas around the Kashi Vishwanath temple in Varanasi. And of course, in other states, you have, in terms of, say, in Uttarakhand, you have Rishikesh, where meat is banned, liquor is banned.
Okay, and now you spoke to a number of people who own restaurants and meat shops in the region. What kind of things did they have to tell you?
Apart from the impact on their immediate livelihood and their businesses, say poultry trade or running non-veg restaurants, they are also pointing out very interestingly how this will affect not just them, not just Muslims, not just people associated with this business directly, but how this is also going to affect all the ancillary businesses, because the supply chain of this entire thing is structured in such a manner, and all these things came up over generations. So there is this very telling quote in the story where this gentleman Rajkumar, who is a Hindu and who owns one of these restaurants, non-veg restaurants, just outside the municipal limits of Mathura. But he has this quote where he says, I started this shop around 2 years back with a Muslim partner, and I source my entire raw meat from Bharatpur Fatak, which has now been shut, and my shop has Hindu employees. So when you talk about this ban is going to affect a very small number of people, how that is not entirely true. So which is why, purely because of the fact that these businesses are very much interlinked. These communities are somehow tied due to these business interconnections. And even in Mathura, even within the city, so there are these restaurants where a large number of young Hindu men are employed as cooks, as waiters. And not just that, there's this very interesting example where this Hindu gentleman, he supplies flour across restaurants in Mathura. Now he told me he is claiming that over half his monthly earnings came from supply of atta to these non-vegetarian restaurants, where tandoori roti and all kind of chapatis are more popular and cheaper, are more in demand.
And Saurav, you also spoke to those in the Dalit community as well regarding this. What stood out for you in those conversations?
Yeah, so very close to Bharatpur, the Bharatpur poultry market, there's this Dalit Mohalla. They call it the Khatik Mohalla, which comes under the Dampier Nagar neighborhood in Mathura. So you have a lot of Khatiks involved in the meat business. And now I spoke to one of them and they were aghast with the entire thing. Even their businesses are going to be shut. And, they very interesting, they pointed out how it's not just Dalits or Muslims who are consumers of meat in Mathura. So Mathura is a city, the municipal limits of Mathura has around 4 lakh people, out of which 81% are Hindus and around 17% are Muslims. So even in terms of meat consumption, according to the traders, over 80% are actually Hindus. And of cross caste, say Thakurs, Baniyas, even Brahmins, they are their regular customers.
Okay, so clearly this decision impacts people from across communities. So has the UP government proposed to do anything about those who own meat shops and liquor shops in the area? Any way they can be compensated?
The CM spoke about the need to rehabilitate them in very vague terms while proposing that a ban of this magnitude be enforced around Janmashtami. But so far, there's nothing concrete. And he also spoke about how these people should look for alternatives in terms of, say, taking up milk trade. But people are not, there are no takers when it comes to these proposals because the margin is such, just doesn't add up.
Yeah, and I'm guessing just shifting from one business to another one entirely won't exactly be feasible.
Yeah, their shops came up 40, 50 years back. They have been here for generations doing the same thing. This cannot happen overnight. And there's nothing official, nothing concrete, no action plan. As of now, yeah.
And the other thing that you point out in your story is that with the closing of liquor shops, the state will take a hit in, the revenue it gets from excise duty and license fees from these shops. It is, after all, a big source of revenue for the government.
Yeah, which is why, very interestingly, when it comes to liquor shops, I have seen administration officials working very proactively to identify the number of liquor shops which will be affected, which will have to be relocated. So they are putting together an action plan to relocate these. So something around 45 to 50 liquor shops will have to be shut down due to this new order. So they are already working on a plan to relocate these shops outside the limits of these particular wards. because they know this is going to impact in terms of excise and in terms of license revenue they earn from these shops.
And next we talk about Chhattisgarh. 8 years ago, in what is called the Edis Meta incident, 8 people were killed by security personnel in Chhattisgarh. This had included 4 minors. This incident happened in the Bijapur district of the state. Security personnel had said that those who had been killed were Maoists. But a judicial inquiry has now found out that this was not the case, and that their killing was a mistake. In this segment, we talk to Gargi Verma, who reports on Chhattisgarh for the newspaper, about this report and the incident in question. Gargi, before we talk about the judicial inquiry report that has come out, could you talk about what happened during the Edis Meta incident?
In the intervening nights of May 17th and 18th in 2013, 8 people, including 4 minors, were killed in what was then termed as an encounter between security forces and Maoist organizations. There was around a team of 1,000 men, personnel, including CRPF personnel, who were leading the incident at that point of time. And the police narrative at that point of time was that they had busted a cell of Maoists and they had had an encounter in which they were fired upon as well.
Right, and when this incident happened, how big of a deal was this, when compared to other such incidents in the region? What were the kind of reactions people had to it?
So, Edis Meta is a village deep inside the forest in Bijapur. 7-8 years after the incident, there's still no road to the village. The village is accessible only by foot. The reaction to this incident cannot just be seen in isolation, because just a year previously in Sarkeguda, same district in Chhattisgarh, a similar incident had happened where 17 people had died. At that point of time, the security forces had claimed those 17 were also related to the Maoist organization. At this point, for Edis Meta, in the immediate aftermath of the incident, the police had said that some villagers might have died in the incident because Maoists used the villagers as human shield. However, 4 minors had died, which had raised a huge question mark against the security forces at that point. And even afterwards, Indian Express had done a story from the ground in 2013 about how the postmortem had happened on the spot, flouting a lot of rules. Incident was basically taken with a pinch of salt even then, because the villagers were very vocal about how they had all gathered for a celebration of a festival and were then fired upon ruthlessly by the security forces in the middle of the night. Why is this important, or why was this a big issue at that point of time? Was A, because of the minors, and B, because this was a gathering of villagers, as the villagers at that point of time had said, that this was a gathering to celebrate a festival, very similar to a year prior in Sarkeguda, where 17 people had died. It was the same festival even, which the people had gathered for.
Okay, so after this incident happened, there was this judicial inquiry, the report for which came out last week. What has this report revealed?
So the report has indicted the security forces by saying that none of the 8 people had any Maoist connections, the 8 who had died. The report also states that the villagers had just gathered peacefully around a fire outside of the village area. There were around 25 to 30 villagers that had gathered at the fire, and they were celebrating their local festival of Beach Pandum, which is basically a festival in the tribal areas that celebrates new life. So the report says that there was no need for fire. There was no fire on the security forces. They opened fire on these villagers just in panic. The report says that the incident was a mistake at least thrice, and says that there was no confirmed intelligence that the security forces had for the marching ops. The rules and norms that the security forces are supposed to follow when going on an operation were also not followed. Of the 44 rounds that were fired at the spot, 18 were fired by one same man who eventually later died in the incident. And the report also says that the bullet injury to that man was not from the guns that were seized from the spot. The police at that point of time had seized 2 Bharmar rifles, but the bullet injury in the person who had died, Dev Prakash, he was a constable with this Cobra unit of CRPF. He had died in friendly fire instead of the attack as was claimed by the security forces in 2013.
And Gargi, how rare is a report like this? How rare is it for a report like this to say in writing that this was a mistake?
One of the rarity that we can point out immediately is that Sarkegoda incident happened in 2012. The report of it came in 2019, but it was never approved by the cabinet. So this is a rare first time, in fact, move where the government has accepted the report, the cabinet has accepted and approved the report, and now it is going to be put in front of the next assembly session. And for any judicial inquiry report to indict the security forces, there are a lot of questions, about morale and about the ethical point of view of these things. But this is the first time that the government is accepting that there was a mistake that happened in 2013. There are multiple suggestions in the report of how to do things better. And it is a positive step in that direction, that at least the government has accepted this report. Because Sarkegoda report never saw the light of the day. It was reported by the Indian Express, but now it is pending with the law department of the state government for almost 3 years now.
And what are some of the other things that the report points out?
So there are some more findings in the report, like the police and the security forces never really sent anything to the forensic lab, which is a big lacuna. There was also problems that the report pointed out with the seizure reports and the closure reports that the police filed. Officials tried to have a fair inquiry into the incident. It was believed that the people who had died, if they were innocent, they had died as sort of human shields used by the Maoists. However, the report confirms that there were no Maoists present at that time. The report proved that nobody who had died of those 8 men had any links with the Maoists or were related to the Maoist organization in any way. The report also pointed out that there was a huge lacuna. So the CRPF is mostly people from outside the state who have very little understanding of the tribal customs and cultures. Even the people from the state have very little understanding of the tribal customs and culture in toto. So the celebration of Beach Pandum in the middle of the night came across as a Maoist gathering to the CRPF forces. So the report points that out. And since by the same person who had done the Sarkegoda investigation as well, it now talks about how there should be a teaching module for the forces so that they understand the tribal custom better. One of the other suggestions that sort of stood out from the report was an encouragement to use drones. This is for the first time almost that there was a report that says that we should use drones to sort of establish what we are going against before marching off start, before the forces leave base and go into the village. So that is also important, I guess.
And in the end, we talk about an ongoing border dispute between Andhra Pradesh and Odisha. And this dispute is about 21 villages that fall in the Kotia Panchayat. Both states claim that these villages fall into their jurisdiction. And because of this dispute, many people in these villages are dealing with an identity crisis of sorts on one hand, but on the other, many have also been able to avail twice as many government schemes. Now, to understand why this is happening, we spoke to Aishwarya Mohanty, who covers Odisha for the newspaper.
So there's a lot of history actually behind this dispute over the jurisdiction in Kotia Gram Panchayat. It's 21 villages of this Gram Panchayat which are disputed between Odisha and Andhra Pradesh.
She explains that this dispute goes back to the time when Odisha was first created in 1936. It was carved out of the Madras Presidency, which included the present-day Andhra Pradesh. But a few years after Odisha was carved out, the Madras government contested its boundary and ordered a new survey to be done. This survey, among other things, recorded that 7 villages in the Kotia Panchayat belonged to Odisha. Now, Kotia, if you remember, is the Gram Panchayat belonging to the disputed villages we are talking about. Now, in this survey that was supposed to demarcate a new boundary for Odisha, 21 villages were left out.
The reason being said was they were completely inaccessible. If one visits Kotia, you'll understand that it's on a hilltop, completely on a hilltop and at a very high elevation. So back then, there were no roads accessible to this place and these villages were completely left out of this exercise. Now, when Andhra Pradesh was formed in the year 1955, even the Andhra Pradesh government did not survey these particular villages and so it was left out of Andhra Pradesh as well. But after a couple of years, since Kotia Gram Panchayat, since 7 villages of Kotia were with Odisha, it was taken that these 21 villages were also a part of Odisha. But the fact that it lies completely on the border of Odisha and Andhra Pradesh, and when the state border was declared, there was no official demarcation which happened or no official survey which happened, which is why even Andhra Pradesh started claiming its stake on these villages. That's the reason why there has been a conflict ongoing since then, since 1950s. There has been a conflict regarding to which state these particular villages belong to.
Aishwarya, so clearly it has been decades since this problem has been going on. How has it affected people in the region?
So when I visited these villages are mostly inhabited by different tribes, and most of them speak in Kui. Kui is a tribal language of the Kondh tribes. There was a village Madkar, and I visited 3 generations, and every generation spoke a different language. So there was like the senior most generation would speak only in Kui, and they did not understand either Odia or Telugu. The next generations could speak fluent Odia. And the newer generation, like the fresh generation, students who are now going to schools, they are speaking in Telugu because all of them have been enrolled in Telugu medium schools. So when I met people and I talked to them, the only thing that I could understand was they have been having a problem. Where do we belong to? It's like an identity crisis regarding their mother tongue, regarding their native place. So there are villages where I met a person whose Aadhaar card says that he is from Upper Sembi village in Koraput district of Odisha. And just 3 houses away, the same village, another guy, his Aadhaar card says that he is from another village in Andhra. The village is the same, but it has a different name in Odisha. It has a different name in Andhra Pradesh. So for them also, it's a bit difficult. Now imagine going to a village and asking them, where are you from? Which village is it? The village actually has 2 different names. And even officially on Aadhaar cards with different PIN codes, different districts. So they have been struggling with this identity crisis. And even for the generations to come, that's their main concern that has been there. And between the tussle, honestly, there have been a lot of development works from both the states which are happening. But at times, like one state takes up a development work in one of these villages and the other state comes and tells them that you cannot do it because you are breaking the status quo. So a lot of times, some development works are even stopped by the other state government. So in this way also, they're just like torn between Odisha and Andhra Pradesh, where to go, where to be and what to do.
And because of this conflict, how hard is it for people to avail government schemes? And is it a problem for states to allocate resources?
So in 2018, Andhra Pradesh government had tried to make inroads in these villages and had distributed freebies and was wooing people to come and vote in their panchayats and in their elections. So that's when Odisha government also became very alert that since Andhra Pradesh government is trying to make its presence felt, and Odisha government sanctioned a 150 crore development package for this Gram Panchayat. That's like the highest development package announced for any Gram Panchayat in the state so far. So in 2019, it was the first time that these villages became accessible by motorable road. Until then, all these villages were not even accessible. People could not even reach these villages from Odisha. So in 2019, these villages actually got roads. And since then, the fact that both the states have been trying to claim their stake over these villages, they have been providing them with n number of schemes. And the smart people there, they have actually been availing double schemes from both the states. To not lie, but like there are people who have got ration cards from Andhra Pradesh and Aadhaar cards from Odisha. And they do this, that the ration card, they avail ration from Andhra Pradesh. And if they're able to, they avail the same ration from Odisha as well. And all kind of welfare schemes, be it girl child education or education itself, or provision of pensions, widow pensions, all of these, people have been trying to avail it from both the states. And both the states are aware of the fact that people have been doing it, but still they want to provide all the schemes that they can from their respective states so that when the time comes, if the people have to take a decision towards either of the state because of this. So yeah, that way they do not have a problem as such. But now, like for instance, we spoke to people who were vaccinated and we asked them which state vaccinated you. And we got to know that the first dose was by Odisha, the second by Andhra Pradesh apparently. But they don't have certificates from either of the states. And when I did speak to the respective officials, they told me that it's in remote locations. They do not have connectivity there. So they'll be providing them certificates, but a little later. So it'll only be with time that one can say if they have been double vaccinated or just vaccinated once, because I think the COVID application will throw light on this, that they have been double vaccinated, but the states will keep claiming that they have given the first dose to these people. So there will again be a conflict of interest between the states here. So this way, there's also loophole in the way they can avail schemes, the fact that both the states keep imposing themselves on these people. But otherwise, they have been reaping a lot of benefits in the last couple of years, I would say, yes.
Okay, so for the people in the villages, this has turned out to be all right. But you write that for the state governments of Odisha and Andhra Pradesh, it is a matter of serious dispute. They have approached the Supreme Court regarding this a number of times. And on the 31st of August, the Supreme Court had basically said that it cannot intervene in the matter and that the two states would have to amicably resolve this matter between themselves. But tell us, what is the reason behind why these states want these villages to be part of their jurisdiction?
So for now, both the states have been saying that it's purely territorial. The fact that Odisha says that, it has been a part of our state for so long. The fact that the 7 villages were a part of it. So how can Kotia be divided? Kotia has 28 villages, 7 are ours, so 21 villages are ours as well. And then they started counting these villages as revenue villages. So they say that since we have been taking care of these villages, these people belong to us and we belong to them, kind of. And so AP also says that it's purely territorial and jurisdictional. We have been extending welfare schemes and everything. But there are a lot of activists who have claimed that Deomali, which is very close to Kotia, is actually rich in biodiversity. A lot of species have been discovered here. A lot of migratory birds and animals come here. So this particular place, also Kotia, they have been saying that it is rich in biodiversity A, also in minerals. Presence of a lot of bauxite has been found in Koraput district as well. So they say that even in Kotia. There's one mountain, there's a small hill which is called Sunna Pahada. Sunna in Odia means gold. So it has been named Sunna Pahada. Nobody has ever gone there or excavated anything. There has been no excavation as such. But people claim that it is rich in minerals. It will add to the state's economy, to whichever state it will belong to and whoever finally excavates that place. But I again spoke to the district administrative officials, the collector and everybody, and they said that they are not aware of any proper survey being done in this area where they can, say for a confirmation that yes, this place is rich in bauxite. So they completely rubbished the fact that we are fighting over this place because, this place is disputed because these areas are rich in minerals and so on and so forth. But for them, the official on-record statement is that it is because a purely territorial issue between the two states.
You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargav, and was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.